Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and today we've got 8 more fun builds for you, including a couple of requests that people have put in the comment section and other videos. I'm looking forward to this one. We're going to start here with the Iron Ball, which I don't cover very often. So a couple people asked me for an Iron Ball build, and mainly the reason I don't use it that much is for the most part it's outclassed by the Starfist given the addition of bleed that you have kind of on the same poise damage too. However, I do like the Iron Ball. If you're not going for bleed, it does do a lot of poise damage. In cold affinity, it's pretty awesome here. You can see how quickly Moog went down. It is a solid weapon. And it's a base weapon from the main game without the DLC that you could try out. And honestly, I think this one's well worth trying out with Royal Knight's Resolve and Cold Affinity. You can get a lot of damage out of it. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this build. And for equipment, we have the Cold Iron Ball, plus 25 preferably with Royal Knight's Resolve and Cold Affinity. Any seal for buffs. We have the Rakshasa set on. We have the Axe Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman. We have the Dagger Talisman. Last slot is optional. I use the Blade of Mercy from the DLC, Spike Crack Tier, Fate Tier, and we're using Moog Shackle to stun the boss. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 30 Endurance, 60 Strength, 15 Dexterity, 20 Intelligence. We have 25 Faith with the Fate Tier. That's so we could use our buffs. Levels will add up to 160. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength, of course. And next up, we have a build for Eruption that is built on Faith. Now, Eruption itself, the fire part, will scale more with Strength. It's one of those Ashes of War in terms of fire that scales more with Strength. But because there's so much AR to it, you could put it in Flame Art Affinity, get a lot of damage out of it, and of course, once again, get the versatility of a Faith build. Yeah, it's really cool to use on the katana as a fire samurai setup. I enjoy it a lot with the katana. It's a cool Ash of War too in the sense that it'll give you a decent amount of poise damage, and the fire pool below it does decent damage, especially bosses that are weak to fire. This boss is neutral to fire. Overall though, Eruption is a really unique and fun Ash of War. And to clarify, I don't mean unique in the sense of the somber Ashes of War. I mean unique in the fact that you don't see it that often. It's really not that bad, and the posture damage on it is quite good. And if you mix it into a Faith Fire type setup, you'll do fine with a build like this, and you can have a lot of fun with this one. You notice when we use the Ash of War, by the way, we're getting around 5,000 to 8,000 damage with the use of the Ash of War Eruption, which is pretty solid. The katana, the Great Katana itself, gets pretty great AR too in Flame Art Affinity, somewhere around 800, which is pretty impressive. Mix in some incantations, and you got yourself a powerful build. And one I definitely recommend on this list to try out for sure. This wasn't one that was requested or anything. This is a build I've probably only covered Eruption like once. I think I did a build for it on my other channel one time. But yeah, it's not an Ash of War that's used that frequently. I feel like it's a little bit underrated though. It does more poise damage than you would expect. The fire damage and fire pool is pretty good. And honestly, I think it's excellent in Flame Art Affinity. I think this one's absolutely worth trying. Give this one a shot. You'll have a really good time with this. That's honestly just a cool Ash of War. Again, a little bit underrated. We have the Flame Art Great Katana, plus 25 with Eruption. We're using the Erdtree Seal, part of the Rakshasa set on, and the Solitude Pants on. Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon. That's for incantations. Ritual Swords Talisman, Flame Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for this one, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 28 Endurance, we have 15 Strength, 18 Dexterity, 80 Faith with the Faith Tier. We are using Golden Vow and Halashaburi for our buffs. We also have Flame Fall upon them, and then Catch Flame, which I think are excellent to complement this fire build. And this next one's a throwback at Dark Souls 3. For those that remember Dark Souls 3 or are still playing it, the Dragonslayer Great Axe was a lot of fun, and with the Executioner's Great Axe and Lightning Slash, you could pretty much mimic that exactly. For this build, though, I decided to change it up, use 2 of them, focus on some jump attack damage as well, and a lot of lightning damage. Made a mistake with the button there. I meant to actually do a running attack initially, but anyways, we're going to get into jump attacks. It does a pretty good amount of lightning damage on the jumps. The only thing I don't like about the Executioner's Great Axe is the class itself does not do a lot of poise damage. With the charge attacks, jump attacks, etc., it just doesn't really do enough. Even so, this is definitely a cool nod to Dark Souls 3, and it gives you a chance to have a lot of fun with the Executioner's Great Axe, kind of turning them into the Dragonslayer Great Axe. Which is one of the weapons with the highest AR. It has around the highest AR in Dark Souls 3 if you have the right stats for it. We have 2 Executioner's Great Axe with Lightning Slash and Lightning Affinity, any seal for buffs, the Graybird armor set and Rakshasa set. We have the Lightning Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Claw Talisman, Arsenal Charms +1 or Great Jar's Arsenal, Lightning tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this awesome throwback to Dark Souls 3, we have 60 Vigor, 17 Mind, 30 Endurance, we have 34 Strength, so we have the minimum strength requirement on the Executioner's Great Axe, 55 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith tier. We didn't hit over 51 Poise for this one, it's a lot of weight, Golden Vow, and Flame Grip Strength. And next up, we have the Great Club Bonk build. A couple people asked me to do a build for the Great Club. I guess they like the bonk power of the Great Club. I didn't focus too much on Golden Land, the Ash of War. Didn't boost holy damage much or anything like that. Went more for charged attacks, jump attacks, etc. and to work off the powerful AR it has. Because this weapon can absolutely smash. It's incredible. It has like between 850 and 900 AR or something crazy. It has a little bit of Fate scaling. The Ash of War is going to scale with Fate. The weapon itself, not so much. However, the physical damage on the weapon and the poise damage and the power that it has is pretty great, honestly. I think you'll have a really good time with this one. Yeah, so a lot of the fun list I do, I optimize them to a degree. I test all these at the Dragons at Caelid, the Troll at Stormville, and then I use Gatefront, and then I usually find some bosses to take on as well. My more optimized lists are typically the broken builds, which lean more towards how much damage can we get out of it, how easy can we make the game, whereas these lean more towards let's have some fun, kind of play around with stats a little bit. They'll be good builds, but they're not going to be super broken or anything. Definitely could have done more with the Ash of War, but I'm not a huge fan of Golden Land. Let's jump into equipment and stats. And we have the Great Club +25 preferably. We have any seal for buffs. We have part of the Rakshasa set on and the Grey Bird set for the extra jump attack damage. The Raptor's Black Feathers will work well too. Shard of Alexander, Axe Talisman. We have the Claw Talisman. We have the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Spike Crack tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 19 Mind, 30 Endurance, 60 Strength. That has good strength scaling. It's going to put you all the way up to 90, 12 Dexterity, 30 Faith. The Faith tier will bring that to 40, give you a little damage on the Ash of War, and you'll be able to use Golden Vow. And then if you want Flame Grant Me Strength or Hellish Brewery is a little bit better here for more damage. All right, in this next clip, we're going to use a Wild Strikes Cold Katana build, and you could throw in different spells with this one too. I'm using Lucette Staff here. I want to let you know, though, I get beat up pretty bad in this clip. Mesmer ends up getting the best of me for the most part. Wild Strikes is really hard to use on him. A lot of the stuff that builds up is hard to use on him because he has very long combos, and his range is absolutely insane. Yeah, a lot of his attacks, he could stretch out and hit you from a pretty good distance. And then the other thing is when he throws the fire, the hitbox on it, I always have a hard time avoiding that. And then phase 2, of course, you have all of the snakes everywhere. And if you do enough damage to him early on, he almost always does this attack right away, which is pretty brutal, to be honest, because there are so many things to dodge. And then he has a final strike there. Thankfully, I backed up. Quick tip, by the way, if you're having trouble with Mesmer, if you're having a really hard time with him, there's a couple different builds that will damage him pretty quickly. Bleed obviously works really well, but one that I like a lot is Ice Spear. That does a lot of poise damage to him. He's relatively weak to Frost, and even on higher journeys, this is Journey 3, by the way, even if you're on New Game Plus 7 or whatever, Ice Spear pretty much handles him quite well, and it's one of the better things you could use against him because it's so quick and has good mid-range. Wild Strikes is actually a lot better on Rolana. However, I would use the Rusted Anchor against her with that because she's weak to pierce damage. Overall, I was still able to take him down, but I took a lot of damage there. I got hit way too many times. I could have avoided a lot more than that. Definitely wasn't my my best attempt at taking on Mesmer, but ultimately we did take him down pretty quickly. Let's jump into equipment and stats. And we have the Cold Great Katana +25 with Wild Strikes. We have Lucette Staff. We have any seal for buffs for using the Rakshasa set. We have the Shard of Alexander. We have Melissan's Prosthesis. Godfrey Icon, if you're using Comet or Night Comet, is really great. Wing Sword Insignia. And then we have the Magic tier, Fate tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this awesome build, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 28 Endurance, 15 Strength, 25 Dexterity. We have 60 Intelligence, 15 Faith. That's going to be 25 with the Faith tier. So we can use Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength. And then I like Zamar Ice Storm, Terra Magica to boost our magic damage. Glintstone Ice Crag is great. Comet and Night Comet are good too. Death Ritual Spear is what we have next here, and this is a pretty awesome one. I enjoy this a lot because it's great for big targets. I haven't used this weapon in like probably a year or so. It's been a long time. Haven't really looked at it too much. Had a couple people request it. It's great for big targets, not really great for smaller targets. However, with the same stats and setup, you could run Deathspoker in your offhand and switch to that when need be. Both ashes scale entirely with your intelligence stat. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment and stats. Yeah, ignore the dexterity scaling if you're using the ashes on these. We have Death Ritual Spear plus 10. We have any staff for Terra Magica. We have Death Poker plus 10 in the offhand. Any seal for buffs. Random Hellmon with Rakshasa set to hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander. We have the Magic Scorpion Charm. Ritual Sword Talisman. Ballistics Prosthesis to meet the requirements of dexterity on the weapons. Magic tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 25 Endurance, 15 Strength, 20 Dexterity with Ballistics Prosthesis to meet the minimum requirements, 60 Intelligence, 33 Faith with the Faith tier. We hit 51 poise here, and we're using Golden Vow, Howl of Shiburi, and then Terra Magica to boost our damage. All right, next up here, a couple of people asked me for builds for the Watchdog's Greatsword. I decided to do 2 of them, and I'm going to talk a lot about the Watchdog's Greatsword in the process of these next 2 clips. This first one is built around lightning damage, Thunderbolt, and a lot of dexterity. So the Watchdog's Greatsword is a weapon that finds itself in a very weird place. It has around the same weight as Guts' Greatsword. It has better scaling and a lot of affinities. However, its base damage is significantly less. On top of that, it also has shorter reach than Guts' Greatsword, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people look past this weapon and end up grabbing Guts' Greatsword instead. However, one of the things I really like about it is it gets a rare B in dexterity scaling when you go for lightning affinity, and that's pretty cool. That's why I decided to use Thunderbolt, and it ends up giving you a lot of damage on the Ash of War and a pretty good amount of damage on the weapon itself as well. It goes really well in lightning affinity. I want to make something clear because I feel like a lot of people in our community, the Elden Ring community as a whole, which by the way, I love this community. It's been great. You guys are amazing. But anyways, I want to mention this real quick because I feel like this is something like we don't talk about enough. Not everything needs to be super optimized. Your weapon can have a little damage than another weapon if you like the way it looks. You can still make it run well, you can still make it work well, and you can find little things like I did here that you could make the weapon better and more comparable to some of the more meta weapons. There's a lot of people that will tell you, you have to use this, or your build is off, or you missed 2 points here or there. Honestly, I would just like mute that noise entirely and just enjoy the game. Have fun with it. Make the builds you want to make. Use the builds you like to use. Get a decent amount of damage of whatever build you're using to make your life a little bit easier in boss battles, but don't go too crazy with the optimization stuff. Just have a good time. Once you get used to the game and you've played through it a couple times too, you're probably going to be looking for fun more than anything else. And by the way, that wasn't a rant, that was my honest opinion on it, because I get a lot of comments like that. Like, I'll use the Watchdog's Greatsword, and then someone will comment and be like, Guts' Greatsword is better. Like, no, duh. Like, we all know that. Everyone uses it. Of course it's better. It doesn't mean that you can't use anything else in the game, or that you have to use the same 20 weapons over and over again. There's a lot of good stuff in Elden Ring. There's a ton of variety, and you can make use out of a lot of different weapons, like I did here with the B and Dexterity and Lightning, which is honestly pretty awesome. All right, we're going to jump into equipment finally. And we have the Watchdog's Lightning Greatsword, plus 25 preferably with Thunderbolt. We have any seal for buffs. We have the Fire Monk Hood and the Rakshasa set on. We have 55 poise here. We have Shard of Alexander, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Ritual Sword Talisman, Arsenal Charm plus 1 or Great Jar's Arsenal if you have it, Lightning tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats on this build, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 26 Endurance, 20 Strength. That's going to give you the minimum requirement of 30 when you two-hand this, 60 Dexterity, 23 Faith, 33 Faith with the Faith tier, Golden Vow, and Howl of Shiburi to buff our damage. And lastly on here, we have a Fire Watchdog build. It's actually a Flame Art Watchdog build, and this is a really cool one too because guess what? It gets a B in Flame Art Affinity, which is pretty epic, so if you have really high faith, you can take advantage of that. Get comparable damage to Guts' Greatsword. Once again, Guts' Greatsword has way better base damage. The Watchdog's Greatsword's base damage isn't that great. However, it has better scaling to make up for it to some degree. I chose Flame Skewer because that'll coat the weapon in fire too, giving you over 900 AR, which is pretty impressive for our Watchdog's Greatsword. And of course, if you wanted to add in any fire incantations, it would fit this build as well because you're going to have around 70 or 80 Faith. And of course, you're going to have a solid weapon to kind of use as the base for the build. And with all that talk about the Watchdog's Greatsword, honestly, I like it. Yes, it's short, relatively short, but the scaling's pretty cool. It gets a B in a lot of stuff. It even gets an A in Blood Affinity, which is pretty unique and cool. It's a weapon worth checking out. It's definitely worth farming for and picking this up. It looks cool too. We have the Watchdog's Flame Art Greatsword with Flame Skewer plus 25 preferably. Any seal for buffs. We have the Fire Monk Helm and the Rakshasa set. Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Arsenal Charms +1 or Great Jar's Arsenal, Flame Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. Real quick, if you don't know where to get that weapon, because I did 2 builds for it, you get it at Giants Conquering Heroes Grave in Mountaintops of the Giants. It's going to be the easiest place for you. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Strength, 12 Dexterity, 70 Faith, and then we're using Golden Vow and Halshaburi. And thanks for watching this one. Thanks for tuning into my top 8 really fun builds for Elden Ring on 1.16. I hope you enjoyed these builds, and if you did, be sure to hit that sub button if you want to see more content for Elden Ring. I'm going to do a Dark Souls 2 early game guide in the next 2 weeks or so. In the next week or so, hopefully I can do the late game builds for Dark Souls 3. My hand from the surgery I had is healing. It takes up to 6 weeks. It's been around 3 or 4 in total, so I'm still kind of playing intermittently. I will catch you guys in the next one.